The 2021 Ohio State receiver room will go down as one of the best in college football history. On the outside, the Buckeyes had two explosive vertical threats in Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, who would both be top 15 selections in the 2022 NFL Draft. Then in the slot, Ohio State had a master separator in Jaxon Smith-Njigba, who is the most productive receiver in the Power 5 conferences. In 2021, Smith-Njigba led the country in so many categories that it would be quicker to list the categories in which he didn't find himself at the top. He finished first in receiving yards with nearly 1,600, about half of which came after the catch, and among Power 5 receivers with at least 50 targets, he ranked first in yards per route run and, believe it or not, contested catch rate as well. Now, to understand how Smith-Njigba was so productive in such a loaded wide receiver room, it's important to first understand his role in this Ohio State offense. JSN lined up in the slot on over 88% of his snaps. This alignment gave him more favorable matchups and maximized his ability to separate in the middle of the field. On this 3rd and 7 from back in Week 10 of the 2021 season, Nebraska called Cover 1, which calls for man coverage across the board with a post safety. Ohio State called a sticks concept, which tells each of the 4 receivers on the line of scrimmage to break back to the ball at first down yardage. JSN is aligned as the number 2 receiver, counting from the outside on the top of your screen, and I want you to just appreciate the attention to detail in his approach to this route. He takes a speed release in order to force the defensive back to open his hips toward the sideline. Then when the DB starts to move his feet, JSN gets super low to the ground as he slams on the brakes and separates with some help from the turf monster. He's great at using body language to sell one play as a completely different one. Here against Oregon, Ohio State called a wide zone run pass option with a backside slant from JSN, who's aligned as the number 1 receiver on the top of your screen. Post-snap, the offensive line will zone block to the right, and the quarterback's decision will be based on the movement of the will linebacker. If the will expands toward the 2 receiver side, CJ Stroud will give to the running back, and if the will flows with the run action, Stroud will throw to JSN. Now, I want you to pay close attention to JSN's body language during that run action. Watch how he angles his hips right at the strong side apex defender. To the wide corner, this looks like a bubble screen. JSN looks like he's going to crack block the strong side apex, and the number 2 receiver is going to work behind him, creating a one-on-one matchup in the open field between that number 2 receiver and the wide corner. In preparation for the screen pass, the wide corner crashes down on the flat, which creates tons of separation for JSN over the middle. Patience was also key here because it didn't take long for the will linebacker to recover from the run action. If JSN had broken inside earlier, the window would have closed. This play alone displays how smart Smith-Njigba is. He's clearly a coachable player, and he's wise beyond his years in terms of knowing his enemy. He understands what goes through the mind of a defensive back on any given play and uses that knowledge to create separation. He also gives defenders a lot of trouble after the catch. Here against Purdue, OSU called another wide zone RPO, this time with a screen pass attached to the backside. Purdue uses what's called a rock and roll motion check here, which tells the nickel to rotate to the post and the post safety to rotate down into the box when JSN goes in motion. That forces the nickel to come from depth when JSN catches the screen pass, and he makes a nice move in the open field to force a missed tackle. Among Power 5 receivers in 2021, JSN ranked 7th in missed tackles forced, some of which came on plays like the one you just saw where he was schemed open and made a defender miss right after the catch, but the majority of those missed tackles were forced right at the catch point. The transition from before the catch to after the catch is an area where JSN really shines. Here, Utah called a quarter-half coverage, also known as cover 6, which tells the wide corner and free safety to drop into deep quarter zones, and the box safety to drop into a deep half on the other side, while the wide corner to that side squats on the flat. Ohio State called a stick concept to the bottom of your screen and a double post up top, which tells JSN to run a rounded post from the number 2 spot. Post-snap, he does a nice job of working over the top of the linebacker before bending inside, which creates enough separation for CJ Stroud to target him, but what's so impressive about this play is JSN's transition at the catch point. Notice that until he has it secured, he never takes his eyes off the ball. It might not seem like much, but this eye discipline is what makes a receiver reliable. Now, the other thing I want you to notice is the fact that both of JSN's feet are in the air as he makes the catch. This allows him to make the nearest defender miss during the transition to yards after catch. He never even looked at that deep half defender until after he secured the ball, but was still able to make him miss. And you can see this process occur on a wide variety of different routes. Here, against Michigan State, JSN is aligned as the number 2 receiver on the bottom of your screen, and is running a 10-yard stop route against Michigan State's Tampa 2 call. Post-snap, he does a nice job of finding the soft spot in between the wide corner in the flat and the will linebacker in the hook. He again keeps his eyes on the ball until he has it secured, and even though it was a well-placed ball right at eye level, JSN got off the ground to make the catch. That allowed him to plant and make 2 defenders miss at the same time as he hit the ground. In addition to the technical nuance and attention to detail required to execute this process on such a consistent basis, JSN's athleticism is also key to his elusiveness after the catch. At the combine, he tested in the 96th percentile among receivers in both the 3-cone drill and the 20-yard shuttle. He isn't the vertical threat that his former teammates Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave are, but JSN makes up for that lack of straight line speed with short area quickness and lower half flexibility. At 6'1", 196, he has an average build for a receiver, but he plays way bigger than he is. On this second down from Ohio State's 2021 matchup with Michigan, JSN is aligned as the number 2 receiver on the top of your screen running a 5-step slant. The Wolverines are in cover 1 with safety Dax Hill on JSN, who was selected in the first round by Cincinnati a year ago. Post-snap, it looks like JSN lost his footing at his break, which prevented any separation, but he used his body to shield Hill from the ball and won a physical battle at the catch point. JSN's ball skills are extremely rare to see in a slot-exclusive receiver. Later in that game against Michigan, he pulled off one of the most ridiculous one-handed grabs I've ever seen. It's 3rd and 19, and OSU called a dagger concept between the number 1 and number 2 receivers on the bottom of your screen with a deep crossing route from JSN at the number 3 spot. Post-snap, pressure off the edge forced Stroud to extend before the concept could develop, and he had nothing downfield, so he just gave JSN a chance. No matter how many times I watch this play, I can't seem to fathom how he caught this ball. Even the tight angle makes it look impossible. With only 10 contested targets in 2021, the sample size is small, but JSN came down with 9 of those targets for a contested catch rate of 90%. He won't replicate those numbers in the NFL, but for a player in his role, JSN displayed incredible ball skills when CJ Stroud gave him a chance. Now, the one limiting quality JSN displays on film is his lack of long speed. He didn't run at the combine, but his film suggests somewhere in the 4.6 range, and the fact that he didn't run isn't a good sign. That lack of long speed will make it difficult for him to win on the outside at the next level, and slot-exclusive receivers almost never get picked in the first round. He also missed nearly the entire 2022 season battling a hamstring injury. We'll never have access to the medical data that NFL teams have, so it's difficult to predict how JSN's injury history will affect his draft stock, but if he falls past day 1, that's probably why, considering the quality of his tape. There isn't really any area of his game where you'd like to see significant improvement. He's already a phenomenal football player, but he won't just become faster. Injury history aside, you know what you're getting in JSN. What he lacks in concrete physical traits, he more than makes up for with an advanced understanding of defensive coverage calls, a nuanced approach to route running, and extreme attention to detail in everything he does. For some NFL teams, he's probably a day 2 value because of his limited role. Teams that use a lot of 2 receiver sets and create chunk plays through track sprinters on the outside probably don't see a ton of value in Jaxon Smith-Njigba. But most teams use a lot of 3 receiver sets and have a clearly defined slot role in their offense. If you're a team that fits into the latter category, I don't see how you let JSN fall out of the first round. I gave him a late first round grade, and in the right role, I expect him to be a productive NFL receiver from day 1. But that's going to do it for today's video. If you'd like to support the channel, you can check out my Patreon and Twitter, both of which will be linked at the top of the description. By the time this goes live, there will be a poll up in the community tab on my channel for which prospect I'll cover next, so go vote in that, and if you want to see someone that isn't in there, drop a comment. But that's all I've got for now. I will see you in the next one. So until then, peace.